Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kind for being part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. How's everybody doing? I trust everybody's doing just fine today. Anyhow, just got back, got in, raced over from KPFT. Said, oh my God, got to get some videos processed that I didn't. So they're mostly processed right now. How's everybody doing? We are up all over. I see all my emails are there. And I see welcome to the house, E2247. Who says, hello, relatives. Today's visit will be the greatest ever, as usual. And I say, as usual, how you doing, my dear, beautiful brother, E2247. Likewise in the house is Eric Hayes, Melanie Keelan, who says, enjoy yourself, Miguel. Michael, that is. Melanie Keelan says, good evening to all our people. And in the house as well, we have Michael Rudden, who says, it's such a beautiful day outside. It's in here in Houston, Texas as well. It's bonito. No barato, pero bonito. It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day that we're having here today. And it's a, I was about to say it's a pity that I can't enjoy, but I'm going to be honest with you. I enjoy being here in front of this screen, talking to my beautiful folks online as well, even though some of you decided to stay out in that great weather. But what can I say? Anyhow, we're going to have a great show for you today. Student-led campaigns can help. Oh, let me start here. E2247 says, they spoke of Texas high schools requiring students who want to register to vote going to do some, you're talking about what we spoke at KPFT. Yeah, it was really cool today. I enjoyed having Nick Cooper on as well as Ingrid Bond. They made excellent guests. Let's see what else we got here. Food Not Bombs is a movement recovering food otherwise to be discarded, sharing free vegan, vegetarian meals with hungry persons. Yes, yes, yes. And that Nick Cooper is a very hard worker, and he believes in the concept of helping. Of course, in the discussion we had, it's about talking about how best can we get the message out so that people feel that the hungry, the poor, the unhoused is not just a problem for somebody else, but all our problems. And why it makes sense for us to make that attempt to solve that problem as well. So important. So important. Anyhow, on 2nd of April 2022, Reno Food Not Bombs weekly meal volunteers, Diamond and Clarissa Romans, helping a local women select items from a clothing donation, were struck. Oh yes, I read that. And one person died, and the guy said he did it on purpose. I read that. He said he did it on purpose. It's a shame, isn't it? It's a shame, isn't it? Anyhow, all our peeps are not here. I think we're having notification issues. I think Facebook and YouTube are not sending out the notifications as they should. Because these last few days, it takes a long while before people realize that we're on. And I don't know how to solve that. If it's something that's done from a not so kind reason, it's something we can't do anything about, right? But I'm waiting for more to come before I start with our first video. Anyhow, what's on your minds? Let me hear what's on your minds before we get into the actual show. I know there's one topic that I was supposed to cover on KPFT today that I was unable to cover, which means I get to cover it here as well. That's what I love about doing two shows in one day, right? If you don't cover something at 1, you can cover the other. If you can't cover something at noon, you can always cover it at 3, right? That's what it's all about. Así es la vida, ¿no? Así es la vida, mis hermanos. Shiva Las Vegas is in the house, she says. Correct, sweetheart. To which I say to you as well. Shiva Las Vegas. Let's see what else we have in here. Interactive map. What's that? Let's see what's the interactive map. Hunger hotline. Okay, search for a group. Oh, that's great. It's interesting that South America is so limited, huh? Or at least is not very well populated with info. Now, in Australia, I noticed that the map shows a lot around. But anyhow, let's go ahead. Let's wait for a few more to show up before I go for the first video. I think I'm going to wait for a few more to show up live. For those that are on podcasts, we always have other stuff to cover. Anyhow, let's see what else we have here before I jump. Melanie Keelan says, I got the YouTube notification this evening. However, I set my mental alarm, which is more or less trustworthy. I love that one, Melanie. I love that one. Let's see what else we have here. Student-led campaigns. E2240 Egberto on 90.1 KPFT today hosted Foods Not Bomb, Nick Cooper and Ingrid. Rich countries must fix environment. And that's what we're going to talk about here. Rich countries must fix environment. But before I get into that complex subject, I want to get more people on. But for some reason, it seems like our notification hadn't gone out or something. We'll try to see if that is the case. But anyhow, let's go ahead and do the first video. The first video has to do with the gun issue. We got to stick with this for a while. And it goes like, how should I say this? Let me set it up this way. We see people gunned down day in and day out. And it has reached a point right now where, for all practical purposes, and it goes with me as well, I see the Chiron on the screen goes across and it says 10 people shot dead in Las Vegas, or 5 people shot dead in Louisville, or 4 people shot dead, mass shooter. And at first it was a whole day story, and that's all we spoke about. I don't know if you noticed the news. Yeah, they speak a little bit more about the story, but then they go on with the other news as opposed to it being like something that just stays on forever and ever and ever and ever. Because we're getting not immune to it, but it's almost like a matter of fact that we've learned to accept, which is a bad thing. And today on Morning Joe, one of the hosts had something to say. If people could just hear the screams, if people could just hear the screams when a loved one realizes that an AR-15 annihilated the bodies of that loved one. Just imagine that's you. Imagine that's your kid. Imagine that's your mother, your father, your aunt, your uncle. Imagine you get in the news that their body has been mutilated by an AR-15. I want you to listen to how Joe Scarborough starts this piece, and then how the other two hosts ended. I think it was a marvelous observation. Let me know what you think.
We made a decision as a country 20, 25 years ago to make driving in a car safer. How many lives have those decisions made? We could do the same thing with guns. We didn't want to take away people's cars. We wanted to make driving a car safer. We need to do the same thing with guns.
And the twisted irony, Joe, is that this conversation we're having right now and the reaction to these horrific shootings has just the opposite effect. It makes people harden their stance and run to their battle stations and buy more guns because they believe more laws are coming that will restrict their rights. That's the belief. It happened after Sandy Hook. It happened after President Obama was first elected. It's just the rhythm of how this has gone. And Mike, you're struck, though, listening to Dr. Smith, how when he talks is completely devoid of politics. He's on the back end of this saying, I don't want to see these people having been shot up by AR-15s with, as he said, with their organs liquefied. I don't want to treat those people. You listen to cops, no politics there. I don't want my officers running in and being confronted by military-style AR-15s and being in a gunfight like they're on a battlefield somewhere. You listen to parents saying, I don't want to drop my first grader off at school and get a phone call 2 hours later that they're not coming home because somebody walked in and shot up the school. There's no politics to that. There are political discussions to be had. There are remedies potentially. But this isn't about politics for the people who deal with it firsthand.
Willie, there's a phrase the doctor used, Dr. Smith used, that's been repeated often after every shooting that we cover, after every shooting. And it's, we have to do something. We have to do something. But we don't do something. We do little things occasionally to address gun violence, but we have to do something. We've failed at doing something. We've failed the country. We've created victims. I can almost guarantee you one thing about Dr. Smith. When he was talking about the difficulty of leaving the trauma unit and going out and telling a wife, a mother, a husband that your spouse, your father, your mother is dead. They're not coming back. And then listening to the cries of grief, the screams in an emergency room waiting room. Dr. Smith, I guarantee you, lives with those screams. Our problem as a country is we don't hear those screams in unity. Our problem as a legislative body in the Senate and the House, they don't hear those screams. I would like to see United States senators who continually stand against renewed gun legislation that would help solve this issue, this virus that has crippled America, that threatens America every day. I would like to see them stand in one of those emergency rooms and listen to the cries of children and wives and husbands and mothers and fathers who know that their loved one is dead 15 feet from where they stand. Listen to those screams because America is screaming right now.
And sadly, they could hear those screams every day somewhere in this country.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead, number one, subscribe to our channel, and number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate. Oh my God, I couldn't get that thing switched. But anyway, wide awake, welcome aboard. You're late. We are here. That's what's important. Let's see. Mike is in the house. Alistair Waters made it into the house. All right, it seems like the notifications have started going out. Shiva Las Vegas, I think I called you out. Carl Cox is in the house. Para ver quién más está aquí. Anyway, great to see everybody as usual. So as you can see, the reason I love that piece, right, is because earlier today on the show, at the KPFT show, we were talking about how easy it was for all the unhoused to be under the bridges in Houston, and you know, it is just too easy because we pass, we see them, we feel bad, and we go on with life. And what I was telling Nick Cooper is I said, the thing that we have to learn to do, and I have to learn to do, we all have to learn to do it, those of us that are activists trying to make changes. We have to make the pain that the underprivileged, that the people who have had it bad, we have to make the pain that they're living under those conditions a pain that we can empathize with and feel, and that it makes it existential. The same thing goes with guns. we have to, for all those who are victims, at the time that they're victims, they wish we had had an AR-15 ban, an AK-47 ban, better gun control, better health care that treats people with mental illnesses. At that time, when their loved one is shot, when their loved one was a victim of having AR-15s prevalent in the society, not having the health care to take care of the mentally deprived, at that point, they see the correlation. We have to be able to find that story to make that correlation between your existence and the troubled existence of others. It's a bit deeper than empathy, but that is where we got to get. Alistair says, hi all. Good show this afternoon on KPFT, brother. Thank you, sister. So yeah, we have to really figure out that, and whoever can learn how to do that, share how that is actually done. Gun nuts feel no empathy. They love the death of others. Evidently they do. Carl Cox also says, it wouldn't make any difference. Gun nuts love death more than life. Look, I don't know what's wrong, but I think it's for us not to concentrate on them, but to concentrate on the changes that we have the ability to make. And I think that is where we have to start doing what needs to be done. I really think so. Anyhow, Sharkula, hairstylist, I just saw her. She says, everybody disco. I haven't discoed in such a long time. My staying alive. Remember those days? Remember, it's funny because my wife was playing some songs in the car, and my daughter's like, wait, Mom, that is the Bee Gees. I said, yeah, I used to like the Bee Gees. Actually, I did like the Bee Gees, Anyhow, she's a Bee Gees fanatic, a Earth, Wind, and Fire fanatic, a Commodore fanatic, and of course, Chicago, and Michael McDonald. Anybody likes Michael McDonald here? All right, continuing. Our authoritarian in chief apparently went on to one of the news channels and started to give utter praises to the world's most revered authoritarians, to the world's most revered dictators. And he's running for president. After you hear this, are you sure you want him for president? Check this out.
Let's get to some of former President Donald Trump's most effusive praise yet for authoritarian leaders around the world. Here's what he said in a Fox News interview last night.
They're all top of the line. Our guy's not top of the line, never was. These are top of the line people at the top of their game. President Xi is a brilliant man. If you went all over Hollywood to look for somebody to play the role of President Xi, you couldn't find it. There's nobody like that. The look, the brain, the whole thing. We had a great relationship. We got along so well. There was a great chemistry we had. Great. We talked about everything. A great chemistry. But people ask me, how smart is she? I said, top of the line. You never met anybody smarter. How smart is Kim Jong-un? Top of the line. People say, oh, this and that. Really smart. When you come out and as a young man at 24, 23, even though he sort of inherits it, most people, when they inherit, they lose it. And that's easy stuff. He took over a country of very smart people, very, very energetic people, very tough people, at a very young age, and he has total dominant control. That's not easy. These are very smart. Putin, very smart.
It takes your breath away.
It takes your breath away, but it makes you wonder, my God, really, Donald Trump? And you're running for president? Oh, yeah, but it doesn't matter what you say. You could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and you would still get elected. You said it. people would still love you. You said it, people would still run to you. You said it, and you know what? For all practical purposes, I think you proved it. There is a sect in this country that under all circumstances will support you. Doesn't help that these are the same folks who like to call themselves Christians and evangelicals and all the others, but what can I say, Donald Trump? In the case of your constituents, you're right. But I would be careful of wanting to keep or put somebody in power who admire these people, because remember, while he's your friend and while he's doing things that you think are okay for you, you love him. But when he decides to do things that you don't like, you have no recourse because you have installed a dictator. Be careful for what you're asking for. Okay, let's see who else is in the house. Wide Awake is in the house. Welcome aboard. And yep, people are starting to come on in. All right, let's go to the what I said. I wanted to cover this one on KPFT this morning, but the conversation with Nick Cooper and Ingrid Bond was so good, I didn't interrupt it to come to this subject because I knew that we could cover it here. And my contention is the following. Rich countries must fix the environment. People say, why would you want everybody should fix the environment? Well, let's recall how rich countries got rich. Whenever one reads stories about the games rich countries play when discussing the environment, it should infuriate all who want a sustainable world. The Common Dreams article, Oxfam slams rich nations for using financial wizardry to skimp on local climate funding, is probative. And that article says the following. It says the following. With global finance leaders set to gather in Washington, D.C. this week for the spring meetings of the World Bank and International Monetary Fund, Oxfam is warning rich countries against using accounting gimmicks to artificially inflate their global climate funding commitments. Wishful thinking. The International Humanitarian Group estimated in an analysis released Monday that low and middle income nations will need an additional $27.4 trillion at minimum by 2030 to fill financing gaps in health, education, social protection, and tackling climate change, as well as addressing the damage already inflicted by intensifying extreme weather and other consequences of fossil fuel use. Interest rate hikes by the U.S. Federal Reserve and other powerful central banks have compounded the financial struggles of poor nations as debt service costs rise, putting critical public investment at risk. But despite the dire economic situation facing the poorest countries, today and much political discussion of the trillions needed to tackle poverty, inequality, and climate change, there is no indication that rich countries are willing to pay the true price of a fair and sustainable future. Oxfam said Monday. In fact, there is a risk that rich country finance ministers meeting in Washington this week will celebrate progress on reforms that deliver just 0.1% of the climate and social spending gap in low and middle income countries between now and 2030. And that they will do through financial wizardry that doesn't cost them a penny, a cent. The group pointed specifically to the recent replenishment process for the International Development Association, a member of the World Bank Group ostensibly dedicated to aiding poor nations with grants and loans. Although IDA 20 saw a record, that is International Development Association, IDA 20 saw a record replenishment in 2021, this was not a result of increased donor contributions. In fact, donor contributions declined and the increased allocation was only achieved through the financial wizardry of balance sheet optimization, Upsman noted. Now with IDA 20 commitments again being front-loaded due to mounting crises, there are fears that IDA is facing a financial cliff in the near future. Oxfam also criticized green bonds and other such financial innovations that while positive sounding and potentially beneficial on the margins, ultimately provide minimum benefit related to what's necessary to help avert climate catastrophe in nations that did the least to cause the crisis. I want to stop there. And let me tell you why. Because as we speak about nations, okay, as we speak about rich nations actually giving money to the poor nations and doing more to clean the environment, some people balk. Some people balk. They're like, wait a minute. Why should we invest our tax dollars to help these poor countries? Well, there's a good reason why. If we were ever to sue, or I should say, we could potentially be sued, right? By these people to say the following. Wait a minute. Who threw the carbon in the air again? Oh, the people who had the Industrial Revolution. Okay. Now, what's destroying our country again? Why can't we grow like we grew before? Climate change caused by the pollution created by the industrial complex generated by the rich countries. Okay? Why are we losing some of our lands to the ocean? Again, because of the change in weather patterns created by the Industrial Revolution that's causing the ice to melt prematurely than the normal planetary cycle. So in other words, the United States, people sue other people when they can prove that the damages they sustained was caused by something the other did. Yes. Oh, wait a minute. So maybe if the rich countries don't do their part for what they've created, should we go to the world's court and sue the rich country for damages? Maybe that would be a good thing to do. Only problem, the rich countries control the court. So the only real solution is to work on people's minds, to try to convince them that it's just the right thing to do. The alternatives are pretty tough. Like borders being ran over, people migrating from all the areas that have been destroyed by the climate you've changed. So don't complain when all these people you find at your doorsteps. These are important concepts that we should look at. So when it says the group pointed out, or rather, Oxfam also criticized green bonds and other such financial innovations that while positive sounding and potentially beneficial on all the margins, ultimately provide minimal benefit relative to what's necessary to help avert climate catastrophe in nations that did the least to cause the crisis. If rich countries were serious about investing in people and planet, they would go beyond financial wizardry, says Amitabh Behar, Oxfam International's incoming interim executive director. It's time for governments to find their moral fiber and tax the richest so we can stave off climate catastrophe and lift everyone out of poverty. I repeat, the rich aren't doing anybody a favor. They made their monies off of the backs of us all, including the pollution they created, including the pilfer of the natural resources or raw resources brought to America, brought to Europe to be processed and sold back to these other areas, added value, which means those countries operate at a financial deficit. I wish more people would see things as they really are, as opposed to how people would want you to see things. You look at a continent like Africa. People say, why don't Africa develop further other than Nigeria and some other countries? Well, They won't be allowed to develop, because if Africa is the land of resources, more resources than any continent on the planet. Imagine if Africa decided to say, well, you know what, we're going to keep all manufacturing, all the things that we are going to add all the value to our raw resources ourselves. What do you think the Western world would do? You think they would allow that? You don't think they will create reasons for war? Because at some point, when the people that you freeloaded off of for decades, centuries, what do you think the results are going to be? Anyhow, let's see. Carl Cox says Jimi Hendrix, the Beatles, the Dave Clark Five, the Beach Boys, and the Rolling Stones. Carl Cox says Trump followers agree with him. Eric A says, look at the utter lack of leadership in blue cities, losing business due to regulations and crime and doing nothing about it. I don't see Houston losing businesses. I don't see any of these surrounding areas losing businesses, and our entire Houston metropolitan area is a bastion of blue. I think you're dreaming, Eric. You're seeing things that aren't there. Shakula Hairstylist says, I will survive 1979, best year, I remember that. Irene Cara, I believe, right? Shakula Hairstylist says, blue cities are the strongest safe havens of freedom. Not only that, they support everybody else. The blue states support the red states. The blue cities support the enclaves that surround them. You know, without Houston, there's no Kingwood. Without Houston, there's no Sugarland. Without Houston, there's no Pearland. Without Houston, there's not all these little communities that grow up around it. You know, they depend on Houston. They suck the blood out of Houston. Then they want to say, nah, you Houstonians, stay there. Egberto, no one can